Okay, today we're going to start from Kuf Gimel Amud Beis, and we're going to start at Amar of Bivi, Amar of Yeshua ben Levi. It's 7 lines from the bottom of 103b. So, okay, thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. And the source of our learning, we should have the Beis Hamikdash immediately. So the Gemara starts like this: Amar of Bivi, Amar of Yeshua ben Levi. Bibi says in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Maisa beperda acha shel beis Rabbi. I have a story of a mule in the house of Rabbi. Shemesa, that the mule died. And the sages measured the amount of blood that came out, and it was a revius of blood. Revius is like a kiddush cup. Now, the point of that revius we're going to learn is that revius, if it congeals, that amount of blood, if it congeals, it would be the size of an olive. The size of an olive is the amount of carcass that would contaminate like an avela, as an avela. So what we're saying is that the blood, not only is the flesh of an avela contaminating, but the blood is also. Now this is not so simple. That the blood also contaminates, because we know for sure that the bones and the hide don't contaminate. Flesh does, but the blood is somewhere in the middle. So the blood, does it contaminate or not? Anyway, in the house of Rebbe, they measured it, and it turned out that it was revius, which means that was an amount that would contaminate, which means that it contaminates. Maseches Rabbi Yitzchak bar Bisna. Rabbi Yitzchak Bisna had a question. Hey, Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseir, Rabbi Yeshua, which is Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananya, lived in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. And Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira, they testified al dam nevela shutar, that the tradition was that the blood of an nevela, of an animal that just died and just a carcass, that the blood wasn't tamei. The blood didn't have the tamei of nevela. From Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira, Maisa, there was a story. Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira continues, says, "Vahiyu noichrem aroidiyos la arayos be'israt yishal melech." They were neichern means that they would like pierce. It means that they were killing these wild animals, I guess for food for lions. Bisratia Shalmelach was some sort of area of the king. I guess there were lions there. Maybe it was like a zoo or something. And they were killing these animals for these lions. And there was so much blood. What is the rechuves? To the calves, to the knees, to the ankles? How do they translate rechuves? Knees, up to their knees. It was knee deep in blood, and they were going to the Beis Hamikdash, and there was no problem that they were knee deep in blood. Well, that means that the blood didn't contaminate. It's a clear proof. So what are you telling me? Now we have a question back on Rabibi. What are you telling me, according to Rabibi, that they measured the blood of a mule and they found out that it was a revius, which meant that it contaminated? We see from in the temple times, they were going to the Beis Hamikdash, they were knee deep in blood, and it didn't contaminate. Ishtik, Rabibi's quiet. Amalei Reb Zrika tells Rabibi, "My time like Mahadama. Why don't you answer him? Say something." Zagapis. Amalei, Hechi Ahadale. What do you want? How do you want me to answer? Dam Rav Chanan says, that your life will be hanging in front of you. It's part of the Teichacha. It says, this is a person that doesn't own land, and he has to buy grain. He buys grain for a full year at a time. He is not able to plant and to harvest it on his own, to grow it on his own. He has to simply buy it and store it. He doesn't have a field, so he's like a city person. He has to just buy and store. He has enough for 1 year. He's afraid by day and by night. This is someone that can't afford for a year's worth of grain. He just can afford to buy it for each week. That's like a typical American. And don't trust in your life. This is someone that can't even afford for the week. He just has enough money for each day. He goes to the market in the morning to be able just to buy his bread. That's what he has for the day. He says, "Vahu gavra palter samach." You want me to be able to think, to be able to answer what Rav Yitzchak Bar Bisna asked me. He says, "I have to buy my bread every morning. I don't have a parnasa that supports me properly. So now you want me to answer his questions. My Havi Allah. What's Taka the Pshat? How is it that by in Beis Rebbe they said that the blood is metama, and then Rabbi Yeshua testified that it's not metama, Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira and Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania. Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef answers this. He says, Rabbi Yehuda Meiraina de Ben Nesiava, very like Ishmaite. This is very interesting. Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Loi, who's one of the students of Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Loi, he was the Paisek. He was the Rav of the Bein Nasi, of the house of the Nasi, which is the house of Rabbi. And that was whenever questions they had in the base Nasi, in the house of the Nasi, they would go to Rabbi Yehuda. And he would paskin for them the way he understood. Now, what did he understand? It says like this, the Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda says, we have 6 things that are leniencies of Beis Shammai and stringencies of Beis Hillel, which means that's counterintuitive. Usually Beis Shammai is strict and Beis Hillel is lenient. Over here we have 6 things where Beis Shammai is actually lenient and Beis Hillel is strict. And one of them is dam nevelis. When it comes to the blood of a nevela, Beis Shammai metar and Beis Hillel metamin. The Beis Shammai is lenient and Beis Hillel says that it's tar. Oh, if Beis Hillel says that it's tar, that means Allah is like Beis Hillel. Allah is like Beis Hillel. That means that Rabbi Yehuda would hold that it's not tamei. That's the problem. No, the opposite. Beis Hillel holds that it is tamei because Beis Shammai was the lenient one. Beis Shammai says that it's not tamei. So Beis Shammai metar and Beis Hillel metamin. Beis Hillel says that it is tamei. Oh, if that's the case, then the reason why Rebbe paskin that it's tamei, the reason why Beis Rebbe they said that they measured the amount of blood that came out of a mule and it was a revius. The reason for that is because he taka holds that Beis Hillel says that it's tamei. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda says af kishetimu Beis Hillel leitimel revius, and even then it was only if there was a revius. Because when a revius of blood congeals, you're left with it congeals down to a kazayas, which is smaller than a revius. It congeals, it shrinks, and the amount of carcass of flesh usually that's needed to contaminate would be a kazayas. Food, it's a kebeya, but of the carcass it would be kazayas, and when you convert the liquid blood to the dry, to the congealed blood, so then it goes from revius to kazayas. What does the other opinion hold? The other opinion holds that it's not a machlekes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, at least not like this. And maybe Beis Shammai is the one that's more strict, and Beis Hillel is lenient, which would mean that another Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira would hold that Beis Hillel holds that the blood of a carcass doesn't contaminate. Okay, we start the new Mishnah. In Misnadin lug shnayim v'chamisha al Misnad mishleisha arba v'shisha mishisha l'mayla. So a person, we learned, is allowed to pledge wine to the Beis Hamikdash. It's used for libation. They would just pour it. Typically, it would be poured on the side of the altar, not on the fire. That's typically what was done. Now, there's something called a minchas nesachim. That if someone brings a sacrifice, he brings along wine, flour, and oil. Now, depending on which animal he brings, that's how much wine and flour and oil and flour he would bring. So one of the animals that's brought would be a sheep or a lamb, and you bring over there 3 lug of wine and 3 lug of oil. Another one is called an ayel, which is a ram, a male sheep, and that would be 4 lug. And the other one would be a bull, which would be you would bring 6 lug. So the options are 3, 4, and 6. Those would be the typical amount. Like they sell batteries. They come in specific sizes. So this is the amount that would be a typical size for them to sell. Let's say, because that's what you would need for this. There are 3 options, 3 sizes. So if someone the Mishnah says, if someone pledges a single lug, 2 lug, or 5 lug, which is the odd ones out, which is we don't have any carbon that warrants that amount. So then that's not you can't pledge that. You don't pledge that. You can only pledge 3, 4, and 6, or 6 and above. Now the reason for 6 and above is because everything could be a combination of 6 and above. So for example, 7 could be a 4 and a 3. An 8 could be 2 4s. A 9 could be 3 3s. 10, right, could be 3 3 4. An 11, what would 11 be? 4 4 and 3, right? 8 plus 3 would be 11. So everything could be a combination of that. So Meshisha L'mayla is always going to be good. Only thing is 1, 2, and 5 is not. Those are like prime numbers, so you can't combine other things, right? Okay. That's the question. Yesh kevel nesachim in kevel nesachim. If a person pledges nesachim, is that pledge an established amount where you can't adjust it? When it says hechidam, what are you talking about? What's the case? In the IC Chamisha, let's say a person pledges 5. Now, if you say that it doesn't matter what he pledged, there's no set amount. So Mashecha Makavarba, so big deal. We said you don't do 5. But so what? You do 4 of the 5. Okay. Mashecha Makavarba minayo dechazilayel, because 4 is fit for a ram, we said. V'idach, you have 1 extra left over. So don't worry, having a dava, you put it on the side, and you'll use it later for nidvas tzibah, the karbanos of the community. They need things. You'll throw this on to one of those things to make enough. But if you say that no, he said 5, so until you have 5 plus something else, then you can't bring it, because 5 you can't bring. So it would have to be 5 plus 1. You'd have to bring the 6, but you can't break it up because yesh keva. You said 5. Yeah, that has to be at least 5. So what's the din over here? Amar Abaya. Abaya says, Tashima. Come and listen. It says, Shisha linadav. It says that in the base of Migdash, we had these shayfras. Those were these pushkas, these containers where they would put money in, and they would open it up and take it out for different things that they needed. So it says 6 of them were made for nadava, 6 out of the 13. So it says 7 of them was the money that was used for the shkalim. Then they had other ones that were used for different nidavas, which meant that if there was left over, Vamrinan, we said, can I get me? What would this corresponding to? The 6. So it says, can I get Meiser Chatas is 1. Let's say someone gave money for a Chatas, but he had extra money. So what do you do with the extra? It has to go towards another Chatas. So they would put it in this thing, in this pushka. Meiser Hashem is the same thing would be for an Hashem, a guilt offering. Meiser Hashem Nazir, same thing if it was a Nazir. Meiser Hashem Mitzayra, or if it was a Hashem of a Mitzayra. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Meiser Kinin is 5. If a person needed to bring birds, they had extra money. Meister Minchas Chayte, or if someone had a mincha there was extra money, a sin offering mincha. Okay. So far, what's our proof? The Gemara says like this. Abai is saying like this. Vimisa, and if you're going to say that a regular nesachim person pledges the amount of 5 lug, so this can shave rachina can I get my nesachim, then we should really have 7 pushkas for the extra lug of nesachim if someone pledges like that, and because if he pledges 5, you can only bring 4 of them. If we hold ein keval nesachim, that you don't have to bring it intact the way that you pledged, you can bring 4, and the other one will just go to the side. You'll bring it some other time. So if you hold that, then instead of having 6 shafers, you should have 7 shafers. So the Gemara answers, Hanach l'nidas asli. Hanishchichi, efshe de mitzarfi demar b'hadi adadi v'karbi. Says, what do you do with this? What you do is, when you have these extra money, it's going to go to community, those types of offerings that the community brings. So, the community have an asham. Community has a mitzvah. The Gemara over here is saying that when it comes to the libation, we don't have a concern that we have to put the extras into a pushka and to hold it, because it's so common for people to bring a karban that would require libations, so that you would always have on the same day, you would just use it from this, you would use it for that. So if there's one extra, you'd use it for the next guy that's coming in with his karban. You wouldn't need a place to store it for a longer time, because it would resolve it right away on the day that you would need an extra thing. Now, my only question is, it looks like that these are being used for nidvas tzivar. Now, these karbanas don't seem to be typical karbanas of a tzivar, a nazar or a mitzayra. How does that a community karban? Let me see what they write. That's right.
Well, once you mentioned that someone forgot these things, the temple will provide them. But it's from the same day. I thought maybe they had like saved up.
No. So all of these different chests that they're calling over here were not really used for that specific sacrifice. They were being used just for oilas, just to buy oilas for Ketzim Mizbeach. So if that's the case, so they would just save it up. When the Mizbeach was empty, they would bring that, what they called the dessert for the Mizbeach. Gamarava. So what we answered is that we don't have an actual answer for if yesh kaval in a sacham or not. Do you have to bring the full amount or can you bring less? Because the proof that we thought would be a proof, the fact that it doesn't say that there's one for the extra nesachim, which should prove to us that yesh keval in nesachim, that there is never any extra. It's not true. The reason why it doesn't say that is because sometimes there is extra, but you just use it up on that day. Okay. Amar Rava Tashma. Rava says, let me try to answer. It says Ezrach. This is by the Nesachim. It says Kol Ezrach Yasek Kacha. Es Eila. It says everyone that's a resident should do this. Malame, this teaches Shemisnadrin Nesachim that you have to that not only do you have to bring a Nesachim together with the sacrifices, but a person can also pledge independently Nesachim. Okay. The Kama, how much could a person pledge? Shleishis Lugin, pledge 3 Lugin. That's our first answer. How do you know that if you want to add more than 3, you can add more than 3? You can add more than 3. Maybe you can do less than 3. No, you can't. Ma Yosef, how much could you add? If when it says that you can do more than 3, we meant 4 and 6. So then the Gemara says, why do you have to tell me a pasuk that teaches me how much you could bring? Where do you get the number 3 from? Because that's what you can bring for a lamb. So 4 and 6. We know that you could bring 4 and 6 because you can bring for a lamb. You can bring also for a ram or for a bull. So what did the pasuk teach me when it says that if you want to add, it says yiyah that you're able to add, elalav chamisha. It must be coming to tell me that you can add 5, which 5 you don't have any such amount, any such libation, and nevertheless you're allowed to add it. But why are you allowed to add it if you're not going to bring it? Shema mina ein kevel in nesachim. Shema mina. We see from this a proof that you can bring the 5. The only thing is you have to bring 4 of it, and then you leave the other one over for the next person. Okay. So basically, what Rav is saying is that we have a limit from a pasuk that you should be able to bring 5. You should have that ein kevel in nesachim. That you don't have to bring the amount that was pledged. You can bring less than that, and the other one will go to the nesachim, but just not in the same sacrifice, not in the same offering. Amar Ravashi. Rashi says, "Vanan le'tananachi," but we didn't learn that in the Mishnah. The way you're quoting things, it says, "Ein misnadin lug shnayim v'chamisha." You can't pledge a lug, you can't pledge 2, and you can't pledge 5. And katani chamisha dam yedishnayim. And it says 5 in the same category as the 1 and the 2. And just like over there, mashnayim bleichazuklal, just like 2 you can't bring. Av chamisha nami bleichazuklal. Also the 5 you can't bring. See, what's coming out a huge difference according to you. You're saying 2, you're right, you have to hold it because you can't bring 2. But the 5, bring 4 and leave the other one over. And we said you can't bring 1, 2, and 5. And now it's coming out that there's a huge difference between the not allowed to bring 2 and not allowed to bring 5. Not allowed to bring 2 means you can't bring it. Not allowed to bring 5 means you can bring it, you just have to leave one over. So it's 2 different. And so obviously it means that you can't bring it at all, which would be yesh keval in the sachim, that if you pledge a certain amount, you have to bring that amount. And the Gemara says, midi area. Is that you have to grab it like that? You have to accept the way you're saying it. That's the fact. Hakadis. Maybe the 2 is different than the 5. He said you can't pledge 1, 2, and 5, but it turns out that the 2 is a different halacha than the 5. The 2 you can't bring, and the 5 you can bring because you bring it 4. But it's you have to adjust it to make it work. Doesn't mean that you can't bring it at all. Amar Abaya. Abaya says imtim tzalaimer in kabel nesachim. If you say that there's no set amount, that there is no set amount for nesachim, if a person pledges 5, he can bring 4 and leave 1 over. In kevel nesachim, so fine. In kevel nesachim, no problem. If you hold in kevel nesachim, so in kevel nesachim. However, imtim tzalema yesh kevel nesachim. But if you hold that it is a set amount, adasara shitali, until 10, it's obvious that you could bring, because I'm sorry. Look, yeah. because once you bring 6, so then 7 would be a combination. Seven would be a combination of a ram and a lamb. 8 would be 2 rams. 9 would be a bull and a lamb. And 10 would be for a bull and a ram. That would be a 4 and a 6. So, but I have a question about 11. Comes to 11, I have a question. What's going to be? Gavra l'shnei parim kamachaven. A person, a man, really would do for 2 bulls. 2 bulls would be 12. Vada malilu lekarbi. And he can't bring it until he has 12. Oy dilma, or maybe, l'shnei elam keves. Oy dilma, or perhaps l'shnei elam keves echad. Shnei elam keves echad kamachaben. Maybe he wants to do 2 rams plus a lamb, which would be 11. 4 plus 4 plus 3. Trei michad mina, v'chad michad mina, amrinan aylai. Do we say that you can do 2 from one and 1 from another? The Gemara says teku. We leave that as a question. Now, it's a very strange question because the Mishnah already said that you can go above 6. Didn't tell me you can only go above 6 until 10. It says you can always go above 6 because you can do any combination. I guess the Mishnah means that you can go above 6 to any combination if you specify. I'm going to bring 2 of this and 1 of that. I'm going to bring 3 of this and 2 of that, or whatever. You can specify, and you can bring any combination, and it's going to be over 10. You'll always be able to work it out. Anything over 6, you can always combine it. Problem is, if you don't say what you're doing and you just leave it blank, you say I'm bringing 11. Now the question is if it would be a repeat of the same one. You bring 3 of the rams. You're bringing 2 of the bulls. That would be 12. So then, fine, we understand that you can do the same one multiple amounts. But to have multiple amounts of one and an individual of another, that we're asking if that would be something that a person would do typically, and if that's really what he means when he says 11. It says 2 rams and 1 lamb, which would equal 11. But we're asking, would he do that? If he specified, then for sure it's no problem. But if he doesn't specify, would that be something that he would mean to do? Now, the next Mishnah says, Misnadvin yayin vein misnadvin shemen divrei Rabbi Akiva. Akiva says that yes, you can pledge wine on its own, but you can't pledge oil on its own. Oil doesn't get pledged on its own. Oil can come as a mincha together with the flour, but not alone. Oil wasn't poured on the side. Oil went mixed into the flour and then was burnt. Rabbi Tarfon or eaten. Rabbi Tarfon says, "Misnadin shemen, it's not true. You're allowed to pledge oil." Rabbi Tarfon. Tarfon says, "Mamatzina b'yayin," just like we find by the wine. That the wine could be as an obligation, and it can also be a donation. It's an obligation if it comes together with a sacrifice that you have to bring this along. It comes as a donation if you just pledge it on its own. The oil also comes as an obligation. If someone's bringing a carbon that requires like an oil or stamim that requires the libations, so then you would bring oil together with the mincha, the chayva. So, and it's also going to come benedava. So we do similar. Why should we should keep things symmetrical? The wine is an obligation or a donation. The oil also. Amalei Rabbi Akiva says to Reb Tarfon, "Loi, where are you getting this from? You have to say that the wine is different than the oil. even when someone has an obligation to bring the wine, how does he bring the wine? He brings it independently from the oil and the flour, because the wine gets poured and the oil and the flour get mixed together. So the oil and the flour are always together. So it would say that the wine that has its own thing is one thing, but the oil is totally different. Now a new Mishnah, a new case of the Mishnah. It says, "Ein shnayim misnad misar mechad." When it comes to a carbon mincha, you can't bring it as a partner. You can only bring it alone. But when it comes to an animal sacrifice, you can bring it in a partnership. Two people can pledge an animal together. Not only that, that even if it's a bird, it's not a problem to be brought as in partnership. Just the mincha has to be brought by an individual. Amar Rava. Rava says, going back to the machlekes between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon regarding if a person can pledge oil, it says midivri shneim nilmad. You can learn from both of them that misnadav adam minchos nesachim b'chol yom, that a person can pledge mincha of nesachim every day. Their machlekes was only about can you bring oil alone, but if you weren't bringing the oil alone, you're bringing it with a mincha, that would be no problem. Gemara says pshita. That seems obvious. Of course, it says in the Torah, if you want to bring a mincha, you bring a mincha. This mao the tame. I could have thought minchas nedava gali berachmana hani chamish menachos in tefillah. I could have thought that when someone pledges a mincha, there's 5 types of mincha that a person can bring, like the parsha Parshas Vayikra talks about. The one that's baked in the oven, that could be wafers or it could be loaves, and then you have the flat pan and the deep pan, and then you have the oil one that's brought just as dough. So that would be the type of mincha where you could bring. But minchas nesachim, which was a different sort of mincha, maybe you can't bring. Kamash Malan, it comes to tell us hani mila b'stama, that those 5 minachas is just if you don't pledge. Avalecha the parish, but if you say specifically I'm bringing a minchas nesachim, then you're allowed to bring that as well. It's totally different. A regular mincha is eaten by the kayanim. Minchas nesachim is burnt on the altar. So it's a totally different type of mincha. Who said that you're allowed to bring that? So it comes along our Gemara, Rava, quotes from Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon that says that you are allowed to. Okay, now in the Mishnah we learned, Ein shnayim misnadvim. 2 people can't pledge a karban mincha. My timer. Why not? Ilim shem deksiv takravayla. If it's because it says I'm sorry. If it's takriv, you have to put a comma there. If it's because it says you should bring, takriv is an individual, second person singular, right? You shall, and the you as a singular you. Thou shall. So oilanami ksiv yakriv. So the oila also it says as a singular. It says it as third person. It says he should bring, but so what? That's still a singular. Ella. That's not going to answer us why you can only bring why a mincha has to be brought by an individual, because a noila, which we said could be brought partnership, also uses a single. Ella oila, my time. What's the reason why the oila you can't do it? By an oila you're allowed to bring a partnership because there has another one that's a plural. You all, the plural you. Minchanami haksiv lemincha seichem. But the mincha also, it has a plural. Mincha seichem. Okay, so we're trying to differentiate between the two. We're not finding the difference. Ela mishum deksiv nefesh. Rather, by a mincha, it says the word nefesh. It says nefesh kisakriv, when a person will bring. Tanya nami hachi. It's also taught in a brayso Rabbi Yirmiyah yakriv karbane l'chol nedrem l'chol nedveisim meshayikriv l'Hashem. It says hakol b'im mishutas. It says that when he will bring his sacrifice for all of their vows, all of their donations that they bring to Hashem, yakrivu, that they bring, everything can be brought as a partnership. The only thing that's being removed here is the mincha, which it says over there, nefesh, which means a soul, which is referring to an individual. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Yitzchak says, why should we change the what's happening over here? Why is the mincha different? It says by mincha nefesh, and it doesn't say it by the other carbon. Nefesh means a soul that will offer. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem says, Mi darkelavi mincha. Who is a typical person to bring a mincha, a flower offering? Ani, it's a poor person. Mal ani alav kilikav nafshay lefanai. I'm going to consider as if he offered his entire being, his soul, as if he offered his soul. Amar Yitzchak. Yitzchak says, Manishtanis mincha. How is a mincha different? Shenemar b'chamisha mini tigun alalo. That we have five different types of mincha. It says, Mashal melech basav adam shasalei ayavay suda. This is an example of a king. The king had a friend. Friend says to the king, let me make you a meal. The king knows he can't afford to make a meal for him. What's he going to do? He can't make a meal. So the king tells him, you know what? Just make me these five types of pancakes, five types of fried items, and that'll be good. We'll just snack on that. That'll be a good meal for me. So which means that Hashem is telling the poor person that don't worry, I'll be satisfied with just the little bit that you'll make. Okay, Hadranlach Menachos Daf, and we'll be finishing in Perek, the Masechta, in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. So maybe we should make the same on what's today? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Shabbos, Sunday. We'll maybe make the same Sunday morning. Oh. Okay, no, my question is, you could squeeze it in. What's it called? Let's go a little further now. We'll see if it's going to be Friday, Shabbos, or Sunday. See. Don't forget that the Stein Siyam Hashas is coming up. 2 weeks. Okay, the Mishnah starts like this. Someone says that I'd like to bring an Isarin. An Isarin is 1/10 of an ephah, which is a measurement of flour. So Yavi Yachad, he brings an Isarin. Israin nice. If he says I want to bring a plural Isarin, Isarins, right, in English. So then Yavi Shnayim, and you bring 2. Pirashti, pirashti. I specified a certain amount, but I can't remember how much I said. There's a problem. Yavi shishim isarin. He has to bring 60. Said he has to. He makes a condition. Says the amount that I pledged is included in this because you never bring a mincha more than 60. You bring the largest amount. What's my pledge is somewhere in here. Could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, say all the way to 60. It could be any one of those numbers. It could be 59, right? And what's left over that's just going to be a donation. If someone accepts on himself a mincha and he doesn't say which type he's going to bring, so he's not confined to any specific one. There's 5 types. Rabbi Yehuda says Yavi mincha seilas. No, if you don't specify, you bring the seilas one, the flour one. That's the unique one. That's mincha stam. Does mincha? That's what you mean mincha, without any modifier. The other ones have a modifier. If he says mincha, min mincha, yavi achas. Minachos, min menachos, yavi shtayim. He says mincha, he brings 1. He says minachos, he brings minchas, then that's a plural, and he brings 2. Pirashti, veni idea ism and pirashti. I specified, and I can't tell. In other words, here we're not talking about how many isarin. Here we're talking about out of the 5 types, what is he going to bring? If he says, I've said I'm going to bring a mincha. So if he says I'm going to bring a mincha, then you would bring, according to the Tanakama, any one. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you bring seilas. But if you say minachais, then you have to bring 2 types. He says, I pledged one, and I can't remember which type I pledged. So Yavi Chamishtin, you have to bring all five. Hirashti mincha shel Yisraelim. Someone says, I specified that I'm going to bring a mincha of a many of more than one isarin, plural. But I can't remember how much I pledged. Yavishishim isarin. So then you bring 60 isarin in one vessel, and like we said before, there's no eggs in this. Oh, the egg size. Egg size. Okay. Um, Rabbi Yaimer, Rabbi says that Yavi Menachos shel Yisraelis. We have to bring menachos of each type. You have to bring a 1, you have to bring a 2, you have to bring a 3. So the way you do that is you do 60 times 61, which would be 36, 36,000. Yeah, they put the zeros together, right? So it would be 3,660, 36,3660, and you divide it in half. No, it's more than that. Do it on your phone. Do 60 times 61. Okay, and then you divide it in half. So you're going to have 1830. That's 1830 isarin, 1,830 isarin that you're going to need for this. It's a very large amount. Each isarin is 43 eggs, right? So you can times that. 1830 times 43. The egg size. It's a large amount. Yeah, 78,000 egg sizes of flour, which is each egg is 2 ounces. So we're holding by 150,000 ounces of flour. Okay.
This would end up
So end up. Yeah, but that would be eaten by the kain. Okay, let's leave it over here. Okay, we're up to the Gemara. Pshita. Okay, have a good day, everyone.